Hey there, I'm Gadi Schwartz. Welcome to Stay Tuned Now, and we are starting with breaking news out of D.C. tonight. The Supreme Court has just agreed to take up former President Donald Trump's immunity case, and the implications there are huge. We've heard Trump say again and again that he's immune from prosecution for what happened while he was president because that's how presidential immunity works. But it's not that simple at all. So now the Supreme Court is going to take up the issue, and whatever they decide is going to have some massive ramifications going forward. And however it turns out, just by deciding to pick up the case, the High Court is delaying the actual trial by weeks, if not for months, meaning that we could be well into the election before we get a concrete decision. NBC News Justice correspondent Ken Dateline joins us now. Ken, this could set a massive precedent, right? Would this just affect the federal election interference case that Trump is looking at, or other charges from some of the other cases as well?
Well, Gadi, certainly if the court rules that there is some level of presidential immunity, that could certainly affect the Georgia prosecution, which, remember, is along the same lines as the election prosecution in D.C., except it's involving state charges. So certainly relevant there. The classified documents case, which is being heard in Florida, probably less relevant because the conduct alleged there happened mostly after Donald Trump left office. But nonetheless, as you said, this is a huge issue on so many levels. First of all, as you laid out well, it's going to delay whether this case can go to trial before the election. That's in question right now. And then secondly, the Supreme Court has never weighed in on this momentous question of whether a president is in any way immune for his actions while in office. Remember, Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon on the assumption that he was going to be charged after Watergate. So it's long been assumed that presidents are liable and don't have a get out of jail free card. But there are things that presidents do as commander in chief that you can sort of postulate that the court may say that's something they shouldn't be prosecuted for. So it's a big case. It could take a while, and it's certainly going to delay things.
You know, we got to talk about the makeup of the court. That 3 Trump appointees are serving on this Supreme Court. Is this case going to go in his favor just based on the numbers?
No, not in that partisan sense, but it is true that conservative justices, particularly some of these members of the court, take a more expansive view of executive power than perhaps some of their liberal colleagues, and that may influence how they see the question of presidential immunity. But most legal scholars think that the argument that Donald Trump made, his lawyers made before the appeals court, which is essentially that a president could order the assassination of his political opponent and couldn't be prosecuted unless he was first impeached, that's just absurd. It goes against all American legal jurisprudence, and nobody thinks the Supreme Court is going to go there. But there may be some level of presidential immunity that they find.
And can you walk us through some of the timing of this? Because there's a lot of cases, and there's this flurry of court dockets that we're looking at leading up to the election. What happens next?
Yeah, right. So this election case, which most people think is the most consequential case, the Jack Smith prosecution of Donald Trump alleging that he tried to overturn the election, that was going to go to trial in around April. Now it's on hold. The Supreme Court's going to hear this case in April, potentially turns around an opinion by June. That's best case scenario. And then perhaps that case could move forward to trial over the summer. Meanwhile, you've got the classified documents case down in Florida. There's a hearing on Friday about the scheduling there. That's really far up in the air. The Georgia case doesn't seem close to going to trial. Well, the one case that does seem ready for trial is the New York case that's about hush money. Remember, Donald Trump accused of violating campaign law, paying a porn star. That's sort of seen as the least consequential of all the criminal cases against Donald Trump, but it may be the one that certainly goes to trial before he is on the ballot.
And speaking of court dockets, new court dockets, some more breaking news. We just saw that an Illinois judge has removed Trump from the primary ballot there, but then possibly stayed that order or paused that order, hoping that Trump's lawyers will respond soon. What is going on there?
Yeah, this is the third state that has removed Donald Trump from the ballot on the grounds that he committed insurrection. And then under the 14th Amendment, he is disqualified. Of course, the Supreme Court heard an appeal of the Colorado decision on that, and it seemed like a majority of justices were not buying that argument. And so it's widely expected that fairly soon the Supreme Court is going to come out with an opinion saying that Donald Trump can't be disqualified from the ballot on those grounds. So this Illinois decision may ultimately be moot. But we'll have to see exactly what the Supreme Court does, Gadi.
A lot to watch out for. Ken Dateline, we appreciate you. Thanks so much.
You bet.
Meanwhile, in Texas, at least one person has died because of those fast-moving wildfires ripping through the panhandle. One of those fires is already one of the biggest in state history. And right now, there are evacuations and power outages throughout the area, including near the town of Canadian, Texas. That's not too far away from Amarillo. And dozens of homes there have burned. The biggest concern right now is the Smokehouse Creek fire, which has quickly become the second largest wildfire in Texas history. Now, for some context here, it is burning an area almost the size of the state of Rhode Island, and it's already grown to 20 times its original size in just 48 hours. That explosive growth is making it so hard for firefighters to keep up.
We have these super high winds come into the area with low humidities and just will push and cause massive fire growth. These fires are just moving quicker than anybody can kind of get around at this point.
NBC's Gadi is following the latest. Gad, this looks like one of those terrifying fires that is so big, really the only way to slow it down is going to be like a break in the weather, right?
Gadi, that sounds like that's what they need. You know, for a lot of these large fires, the weather can either make it better or worse. And of course, having the infrastructure to do that containment. But a fire this big, over 100 miles long, stretching over various counties here in the Panhandle area in Texas, of course, does require help from the weather. What I can say is that today, the conditions we've seen have not been so windy compared to what the neighbors here told me they saw in the days before. I spoke to one of the neighbors in this area where you can see some of the homes burned down. They told me that when the fire came through this area, there were very, very strong winds that took the fire. Essentially, a neighbor told me they were standing outside their house just over to my left, and it took 20 seconds from the moment they saw the fire far away to the moment when their neighbor's home was on fire, that because of the wind. So, of course, if the conditions improve for the firefighters to keep fighting this fire and for that containment also to be much more effective, then this can slow down the fire. But as of now, we know it's more than 850,000 acres. So it's a large fire that authorities are keeping an eye on, and still a lot of communities with people that have had to evacuate their homes because of that fire, Gadi.
Yeah, the devastation behind you is incredible. Where are people going when they lose their homes?
So every county is setting up evacuation centers. For example, here we have an entire neighborhood that burned down. This is just one of the homes that you can see behind me. And just down the road, there's a church that has space for anyone that lost their home in this area. I've spoken to some of the neighbors who tell me if they can, they're going with friends, with family members. So there are resources. The community is coming together to help those that have lost their homes as everyone waits for this fire to finally be over. But it's going to be some more time, because when we look at the map and the updates that are offered by the state firefighters here in Texas, we see how large it is and how it's still growing. If I look at the distance over to my left, we can still see the smoke where that fire continues to burn, Gadi.
And in Amarillo, I know that there was a lot of fear about a nuclear weapons site there. What's the latest with that site?
Right, so that's about 30 miles south of us. It's just a little bit east of Amarillo, the plant. This is a nuclear weapons facility that was shut down. When we heard about it being shut down, it was informed that this was out of an abundance of caution. But if you look at the map, that facility is very close to the areas that have been closed down. There's roads nearby that we tried to get on today to get to this area that were also shut down. So because of that, the plant has been closed. The workers were evacuated as everyone waits to see what happens in the next few days. And again, as you mentioned, a lot of attention will be paid to the weather to see how the conditions either improve or become much more difficult for the firefighters over the weekend, Gadi.
Yeah, tragic. And the devastation behind you is just heartbreaking. Gadi, thanks so much for joining us. And now to a canceled execution in Idaho. That's because a medical team there failed 8 times to lethally inject a serial killer on death row. 73-year-old Thomas Creech was scheduled to be executed this morning, but after failing over and over again to successfully put an IV into his arm, Idaho's Department of Correction director finally decided it was a no-go. And now the death warrant for Creech has expired, and his status as one of the longest-serving death row inmates in the United States continues. So let's go to NBC News correspondent Elwin Lopez for the latest. Elwin, a botched execution what happened today, and what does an expired death warrant even mean?
Yeah, Gadi, this was going to be Idaho's first execution in more than a decade, but after more than 40 minutes, it was halted. Serial killer Thomas Creech was set to be executed by lethal injection, but that medical team, as you mentioned, they were unable to tap into a vein to place that IV. They tried 8 times. They started with one arm, then they started with the next, they moved on to the legs, and at one point he said his legs hurt a little. Officials say that was just a cramp. They lifted them up to help relieve some of that pain, but after trying over and over to get access to a vein, they stopped the execution altogether. The big issue, they said, Gadi, was that it was the quality of his veins, not just access points. We know that they even did a physical exam on him, and they didn't see any issues then, but ultimately state officials believe that it was that quality of the veins that did not allow for that execution to be carried out. So now they're going back to the drawing board. The state is going to let that death warrant expire, as you mentioned. We know that after the ordeal, the 73-year-old serial killer met with his wife. Then he was taken to a cell, and now we're waiting to hear what those next steps will be. Gadi.
This is such a weird case. We found some archive footage that you're looking at there of Creech from 1981 explaining how he felt back then about the death penalty. Let's take a quick look.
Bob, can you tell me why you pleaded guilty? Because I'm guilty and I want the death penalty. You want the death penalty? Yes. Why? Sorry, I'm ready to die.
It's pretty hard sometimes to live with all the things I've done. I mean, you have dreams about it and wake up in the middle of the night. You think you see somebody in your cell that you've killed or something. It gets kind of hard sometimes.
Creech has been locked up since like 1974, right? Do we know if he still feels the same as he did in that video? And can you remind us again what he did to end up on death row in the first place?
Yeah, Gadi, I want to point something out that in that same interview, he told that reporter that he hated needles, that he wanted to be executed by being hanged or by firing squad. But fast forward to now, 4 decades later, we know that his attorneys filed a flurry of appeals trying to stay that execution. His supporters say he's a changed man, but we know that this is someone who not only has been convicted of killing 5 people in 3 states, including a fellow inmate of his in 1981, that same year as that interview, and he confessed, Gadi, to dozens more.
NBC's Elwin Lopez, thank you so much. And another day of dramatic testimony in the manslaughter trial against the armorer on the movie set Rust, Hannah Gutierrez Reed. Today, the lead detective on the case and one of the film's line producers took the stand and testified about the moments that led up to the shooting, which killed cinematographer Helena Hutchins. The search for the source of those live rounds continues. Prosecutors say Gutierrez Reed was responsible for any live bullets that were in the gun Alec Baldwin says he was holding when it went off. She's been charged with manslaughter and tampering with evidence and faces up to 18 months in prison. Let's get right into it with NBC News correspondent Dana Griffin, who has been covering this trial from Santa Fe. She joins us now. Dana, thanks so much for being with us. Today we saw more police interrogation video of Hannah Gutierrez Reed, right? What did we learn?
Exactly. So we learned what Hannah Gutierrez Reed the day of that shooting, also what she did not do. She says that the box of ammo that was marked dummies she had never seen before, and that she took at least 1 round from that box and loaded it into the Baldwin revolver. She also talked about how she checked that weapon before lunch, locked it away in the gun safe, but she missed a key step just moments before that deadly shooting. Listen.
I wasn't able to do that last check before Alec got it because I had no idea that the gun had been handed off. Next thing you know, I hear like in the earpiece, like set medic emergency. I go over to the front of the church and I look in and I see people on the ground and I'm like, oh my God, was that the gun?
After that shooting, Hannah Gutierrez Reed says that Dave Halls brought her the gun. She looked at it, could see that one of the rounds had been fired, but that the rest, she said, were dummies. Gadi?
Just taking a quick look at that interrogation room again, we heard from the detective who took over the investigation. Here's how she described an interview with Gutierrez Reed when detectives were trying to figure out how those live rounds ended up on the set. Let's play that.
She was the one that handed that box to Lieutenant Benavides, stating that that was the box that she was pulling from, along with, the various bandoliers that we collected with that live ammunition, she identified as bringing from her previous set that she worked on. You know, the other box of dummies, it didn't match the box that she had brought. It was identified as one brought by Seth Kenny. The rounds inside that box did not, even just the dummies themselves, didn't match in the way they looked. So all of this in totality is what we used in our investigation. In Hannah's interview, she told me that she was the one that loaded Alec's gun.
And yet, where did those live rounds come from? Any more light shed on that?
That's the million-dollar question, Gadi. Investigators, though, did conclude that Hannah Gutierrez Reed was the source of those live rounds ending up on set. But during cross-examination, the detective also noted that she did not have direct evidence of when those live rounds actually appeared on set, Gadi. So still a mystery.
And we also heard from the man who handed the gun to Alec Baldwin, right? What did he say today?
So we were expecting to hear from Dave Halls today, but because there were so many delays in court, they actually are planning to call him tomorrow. We expect to hear from him. And just another key, we have seen Alec Baldwin's attorney in court. Her name is Heather LeBlanc. We've also seen her outside of court. She has been diligently taking notes, listening to every bit of testimony. So obviously she is preparing for that case, which is expected to go to trial in July. Gadi.
Dana Griffin, Santa Fe for us. Dana, thanks so much. And today, a hearing was held for Brian Kohberger, the man accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students back in 2022. The judge making it very clear that a possible trial won't happen until at least next year. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin is here with the latest from the courtroom.
Hey there, Gadi. Well, going into this court hearing, the prosecution had filed a motion asking for a trial date to be set for the summer of this year. But during the court proceeding, even the prosecution acknowledged that was not enough time and that they wouldn't have the discovery in the case fully to the defense by the end of the summer, instead arguing for a March 2025 court date. The defense pushing back very hard on that, saying it was simply not enough time given the volume of discovery in this case, and pushing for a change of venue hearing. The judge siding with the defense on their request for that change of venue hearing. That hearing is now set for May. The defense has been pushing for a change of venue. They don't want the trial to happen in Moscow, Idaho. They want it to happen somewhere else where the jury pool is larger, arguing that the amount of publicity, the stakes in this case, and the salaciousness of the allegations require that larger jury pool. The prosecution pushing back on that. We're expecting to hear much more in terms of the contours of those arguments in that May hearing. And then after that, the judge saying that he will consider a trial date, also setting another deadline in today's proceedings, giving the defense until mid-April to substantiate the alibi. Brian Kohberger has long maintained that he was out driving the night of the murders. His lawyer today in court saying they have more expert testimony to bolster that. The judge setting that mid-April deadline for that expert testimony to be put forward, but the defense is pushing again for more discovery from the prosecution. Gadi.
Aaron McLaughlin, thanks so much. And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Coming up, Hunter Biden testifying today in that impeachment inquiry into his father. The details of what happened behind closed doors. Plus, apparently smoking weed as little as once a month is linked to a higher risk of heart attack and stroke. We're going to tell you about this new study later this hour. And back to the moon. Tonight on The Future of Everything, we are going to hear what NASA is saying about that historic moon landing we told you about last week. All that is just ahead, so stay tuned. Hey, welcome back. Hunter Biden was back on Capitol Hill today. We're going to tell you why in a minute. But first, here are some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. The judge who ruled against Donald Trump in that civil fraud trial, Arthur Engoron, was sent an envelope with white powder today. A source telling NBC News there was an emergency response at the judge's courthouse. The judge wasn't exposed to the substance. An officer of the court opened that package, and that's when the powder fell out. President Biden today issued an executive order aimed at protecting sensitive data from so-called hostile countries. Now, this new measure targets businesses that sell people's personal information, and the White House is worried that all that personal data could end up in the hands of countries that take advantage of Americans. It looks like Mitch McConnell is stepping down as the Senate Minority Leader at the end of this year after the longest leadership stretch in Senate history. McConnell's had some recent health issues in months and falling last year, which led to a concussion and a fractured rib. An election to replace him will happen in November. And today, hundreds of patients and providers protested outside the Alabama State House, calling on lawmakers to change that recent IVF ruling. The governor there says she expects a bill protecting IVF to land on her desk soon. Meanwhile, some clinics across the state have stopped IVF treatments since the state Supreme Court ruled an embryo is considered an unborn child. And legendary comedian Richard Lewis has passed away. He died in his home in Los Angeles Tuesday night after having a heart attack. Lewis revealed last year that he had been living with Parkinson's disease, but was still regularly appearing as himself on Curb Your Enthusiasm. He was 76 years old. And a really busy day today on Capitol Hill, and a lot of it happening behind closed doors, where Hunter Biden testified as part of the House Republicans' impeachment inquiry into his dad. They want to know if President Biden was linked to Hunter's international business deals. Now, because that hearing was closed to the public, we don't know the details of the questioning, but NBC News has obtained part of his opening statement where Hunter Biden accuses Republicans of, quote, trafficking in innuendo, distortion, and sensationalism, all while ignoring the clear and convincing evidence staring them right in the face. Let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Angela Sinandela. So good to see you in person. Before we get started, I think that because we don't know the details of what was said inside, let's take a look at what was said on the outside from the Oversight Committee chairman before that meeting started. Let's take a look.
With each interview, we learn more information. We find more potential evidence that needs to be obtained, more hints, more accusations that need to be investigated. So as long as we keep getting new information in, we're going to continue to pursue.
More potential evidence, more new information. Like what? Do we know what he's talking about?
So, Gadi, it really depends on who you ask what sort of evidence there is, because the Republicans are saying there's a treasure trove of evidence, and then you have Democrats saying it's all smoke and mirrors. But what the Republicans have brought forth so far is that through bank records, they've determined that between 2014 and 2019, Biden's family members received $15 million in business deals with foreign entities. But it's important to note that it has not been proven that any of those business deals were actually illegal or that Joe Biden himself technically benefited. So that's what we have so far. But muddying it a little bit is that Joe Biden claimed that he didn't really meet these people, but it appears he did, but maybe just for social reasons. So that's where the gap widened and opened for the Republicans to charge forth.
What happens next? How long could we see this inquiry go forward?
Well, it could really go on for a really long time. There's no technical rules there, and it's really about strategy. So right now, it's in the House Oversight Committee and the Ways and Means Committee. They then could wrap up these investigations and then punt it to the Judiciary Committee. At that point, they'd hold a hearing of their own and then take a vote and then decide whether or not to draft these articles of impeachment. But it's unclear it will get to that stage because, to your question earlier, it's also possible that they will just keep doing these subpoenas, keep having more witnesses, and possibly just delay this to the election.
And while we've got you, there was this decision that just came out here in New York when it comes to that Trump verdict on him having to pay. And it now looks like he may be able to still sit on boards and do business here in New York. Can you explain that to us?
Yes, so it is pretty tricky. So we we know he had this huge judgment that was put against him by Justice Engoron, the New York civil fraud lawsuit. And with that judgment, Trump today and his lawyers went to an appellate judge and asked if they could only put up $100 million as a bond and then not have to pay the rest of that. It was actually very memorable that his lawyer said not even Jeff Bezos, not even Elon Musk, not even Donald Trump have $500 million just laying around. So the point is that in order to have $500 million, they would need to take out loans, but they can't do that because they were barred from doing that by Engoron. So the judge almost split his ruling here, and he said, look, I'm going to make you still pay that whole amount, but I will let you take out loans, which will then allow him to pay the fees. And in addition to that, I will allow your adult sons to remain as owners and officers of the company until the appellate court makes a decision.
Meanwhile, does that interest still stand?
Yes,
it's something
that still stands. It just keeps on growing.
It's like $100,000 a day or something.
A little
right?
more than that. Yep, Gadi.
Wow. Angela, thanks so much for being here. And the Biden campaign is celebrating last night's primary win in Michigan, but it wasn't the easy slam dunk they thought it would be. That's because of those 100,000 or so people who voted uncommitted instead of voting for Biden. They used their votes to make a statement protesting Biden's handling of the war in Gaza. Take a listen.
Even as a single issue, just that issue alone was enough for me to not circle next to his name. So I voted uncommitted to hopefully send him a message that there's a big enough population that believe like this is a very important issue, and we want to see certain actions from him that he hasn't done up to this point, which is a permanent ceasefire.
So next up on the primary schedule is the big one, Super Tuesday. That is next week, and the organizers of the uncommitted effort are now looking to keep the momentum going in other states. NBC News correspondent Shaq Brewster has more.
Hi there, Gadi. Well, organizers from Listen to Michigan, essentially that group that was organizing this protest campaign against President Biden, they were certainly celebrating the results of the Michigan primary last night. They say that they've already been in contact with organizers from other states in upcoming primary contests to see if this is something that can be replicated down the line. And let's be clear here. President Biden did have a commanding and convincing victory here in the state of Michigan. He won every county in this state. He got more than 80% of the vote in this state. But while that is true, it is also true that this group feels as if they overperformed. They beat out their own metrics. They were able to win 2 cities across the state of Michigan. And the tone that you heard from them in a press conference that they had earlier today is that their clear message was sent. They believe that they were sending a message to President Biden and to the Democratic Party that they don't like what they're seeing overseas. They want an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in that ongoing war, and they want to stop and cut off the United States military support for Israel. Meanwhile, the Biden campaign, they acknowledge the uncommitted votes that were received. They say that the president shares the same goals in terms of having a lasting peace and to coming and forming some peace in that region. But the question is, and the ultimate test as we look ahead to the general election will be whether or not that message was received and whether there is any change that can be made that would lead those 100,000 people who voted against President Biden in this election to flip their votes and support him in November. Gadi?
And coming up, a new study shows a connection between smoking weed and heart attacks in what will definitely be a buzzkill. Dr. Sayal will be here in a couple minutes to explain. But first, you gotta see this. What you're about to see is the birth of a new IPA. Watch as this worker goes to check on the tank and oh, boom! You could say that beer has a little bit of a kick to it. Apparently, the valve on the tank malfunctioned, causing that epic jet stream of beer. All the workers are okay. This incident actually inspired the Minnesota brewery to name their new IPA Blowback, because obviously, you know, it'll knock your socks. We'll be right back. And welcome back. A new study has links between marijuana and heart attacks. We're going to get to that in just a second. But here are some of the stories we're following out west. Police in Los Angeles arrested 2 more people for breaking into that infamous downtown graffiti-covered high-rise. Now, this happened this morning, and they were apparently part of a larger group who broke in late last night. A lot of them are suspected to be kids, and police have put up this new metal fence around the building to try to keep people out. But as you can see, those break-ins are still happening. And Congresswoman Lauren Boebert's 18-year-old son has been arrested in Colorado. He faces 22 possible charges related to a string of alleged thefts and car break-ins. Now, this is just the latest drama involving that family. Last month, Boebert's ex-husband was arrested for an alleged assault. And California says it seized enough fentanyl last year to get this, potentially kill everyone on planet Earth twice. That would be around 62,000 pounds worth. The state's seeing a dramatic surge of the synthetic opioid recently. Authorities have seized more than 5,000 pounds in 2021 and then 28,000 pounds in 2022. Now, we have heard a lot about the benefits of medicinal pot, but a new study published today might make some people think twice about headed to the dispensary because it found that smoking, vaping, or even eating marijuana is linked to significantly higher risks of heart attack and stroke, even if the person had no pre-existing heart conditions. The study is among the largest to show a connection between marijuana use and heart health in people who don't also smoke tobacco. So joining me now to break this down for us is NBC News medical fellow Dr. Akshay Syal. Dr. Syal, thanks so much for joining us. A lot of people are blazing it these days. We have a lot of heart disease. Like, what do we know for sure here?
So, Gadi, a lot of people, yes, are blazing it these days. Almost 1 in 5 Americans, actually, the latest survey suggests, have used marijuana in the past year. And it's going up, and by the time next year's survey is up, it's going to go up even more, we think. So what is going on here, and who needs to be concerned? I've talked to almost a dozen people about this in the past year about are there risks to marijuana that maybe we're not so aware of? Because a lot of people think, it's a plant, it's natural, it's benign, it's legal now in most places. So people think, oh, it can't really harm me. And, what we're learning is that there is some link emerging between heart attack and stroke, even if you don't actually have heart disease or even if you don't even smoke cigarettes. And that's new with this study. They were actually able to separate the cigarettes from the marijuana and find even if you didn't smoke cigarettes, this could still cause you to have a heart attack or stroke or be associated with the heart attack or stroke. So who needs to be concerned, right? It's people with pre-existing heart disease. Everyone I talked to about this said, if you have heart disease, do not smoke marijuana.
Now, how did we get here? How did researchers come up with this kind of clean cohort separating tobacco users who also use marijuana from people that just use marijuana?
Right. So they looked back at CDC data from 2016 to 2020 over the course of 4 years, and they looked at, about 400,000 people looking at, did they have a heart attack? Did they have a stroke? And did they get heart disease? And what were their marijuana habits? Most people actually did admit to smoking. About 75% said, if I use it, I smoke it. And, the million-dollar question here, Gadi, is if I use edibles, does that take away the risk? Everybody I've talked to about this said theoretically it should be better. So if you have to use marijuana, you want to try to use edibles as opposed to smoking, because with smoking, you get some damage maybe from the THC, but you also get that inhaled smoke, which may contain some of the same carcinogens as cigarette smoke.
So we're talking about a difference of eating it and ingesting it versus what we saw in the early days of tobacco, which is clearly some damage to the lungs and also the heart.
Exactly. And Gadi, I want to tell you what Robert Page told me. He's a pharmacist, a doctor of pharmacy at the University of Colorado. And he said, he's worried we're making some of the same mistakes here with cigarette smoking, because we all know smoking is bad. And we didn't really, back in the 50s and 60s, little signals started to emerge that, oh, it might be bad, but people kept smoking, right? People were smoking even when the windows rolled up. But now we're at the point where these signals are starting to emerge from marijuana, and everybody I've talked to said we need to take this seriously, we need to study it more, we need to find out more information about what it does to our heart.
Fascinating study. And so you're saying edibles, brownies, those probably aren't great for the heart either, but...
yeah, if you have to use marijuana, you want to pick one of those ingestibles.
Perfect. Dr. Syal, thanks so much for joining us.
Anytime.
Now to an NBC News investigation. New legislation introduced today in the Maryland State Senate to protect your money from gift card scams. Now, that is a major problem that costs Americans hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and our Vicki Nguyen has more on what's being done to protect you.
People don't know to even look for the tampering.
Maryland State Senator Ben Cramer says he first learned about gift card draining scams from our report in December. NBC senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett lost more than $1,000 after buying these gift cards from a Manhattan CVS.
These do not appear to be tampered with at all, right? Not even a little bit. Right. All of the seals look totally fine.
Gift card scams cost users more than $228 million last year, with gift card draining among the newest schemes. That's when you buy a physical gift card, load it with money, and a scammer somehow steals that money.
Had I not seen your segment, this bill would not have been introduced. It is a problem across the country, and consumers are being ripped off.
Kramer says his bill would require gift cards to be sealed in a manner that is not easily opened without signs of tampering. For retailers who can't comply, the bill mandates they secure their gift cards in a location only employees can access.
All they have to do is glue this back down.
You don't think this is enough to protect a consumer?
Not nearly sufficient.
But Houston officer and police union director Ray Hunt says based on the union's experience, he suspects the scams start before gift cards ever get to the stores.
It may go all the way back to where the card is created, where someone who's working there is giving these numbers to them before it's even scratched off there. I'm just telling you that I based on what we've done, I cannot trust gift cards.
You're saying it could be an inside job?
Absolutely.
He says the union lost thousands of dollars in Kroger gift cards that were drained almost immediately after they were activated, with no signs of tampering.
What our research tells us is they're getting the number on the back of the card, they're entering that into a program, and that program constantly checks it to see when it's activated. As soon as it's activated, it charges $98 to an Amazon account somewhere, puts that money on account for someone.
The union recently filed this class action lawsuit against Kroger, alleging the company failed to take reasonable measures to protect its Visa gift cards against unauthorized tampering and failed to refund the officers the missing balance. Kroger did not reply to our request for comment, but offered to replace the gift cards. The Retail Gift Card Association says it's possible for scams to originate within a supply chain. However, we have extensive controls as well as sophisticated processes in place that maintain the highest levels of security. Considering the gift card industry's total volume, fraud losses are relatively small. Susan Kuhn says she welcomes any attempt at making gift cards more secure and won't buy another after her experience. $800 in Walmart gift cards drained, money meant for families in need at her Houston church.
I have not bought a gift card since. I am not inclined to buy a gift card because I have absolutely zero confidence that the money will be there.
Kuhn says Walmart declined to refund her money, but after we contacted the company, a Walmart spokesperson said, quote, "We take fraud allegations seriously and will be reaching out to Ms. Kuhn's." To avoid being scammed, consider an e-gift card, but be sure your recipient knows it's coming. Use all gift cards immediately to reduce the risk of draining and give cash when possible.
Cash is king.
Vicki Nguyen, NBC News.
Thanks, Vicki. And still to come, the Pope had to head to the hospital today for some testing. We're going to tell you what had doctors concerned with his health. That's coming up, so stay tuned. Hey, welcome back. We are going to get into the latest on those ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas in just a moment. But right now, let's take a quick look around the world. Today, the French Senate approved a historic bill to make abortion a constitutional right. French President Macron promised this in response to abortion rights in the United States, saying he wanted the right to abortion protected by their constitution so that it was irreversible. Next week, the bill goes before a joint session of the parliament where it's expected to pass. And down in Australia, at least 30,000 people have been ordered to evacuate the southeast area because of an intense heat wave that officials believe could create fire dangers so bad they are calling them catastrophic. Hundreds of firefighters are still battling that massive blaze west of Melbourne from last week, and that fire has destroyed several homes and burned nearly 50,000 acres. And a Carnival cruise ship rescued a group of migrants on a raft about 20 miles north of Cuba. This happened last weekend. The cruise ship passed the group of about 20 migrants, turned back to get them, and called the U.S. Coast Guard to help with the rescue. It sounds like no one was hurt, and those migrants will be sent back to Cuba. And the number of babies born in Japan last year fell for an 8th straight year in a row. That's the lowest since the country started keeping track back in the 1980s. The number of people getting married also dropped below 500,000 for the first time in 90 years. Surveys show that a lot of younger Japanese are frustrated by high costs of living and not enough jobs. Japan's prime minister is calling it Japan's biggest crisis. And Israel and Hamas are shutting down the idea that there could be a ceasefire deal as soon as this weekend, even though that's exactly what President Biden said could happen by the end of the weekend. Negotiators say they are pushing hard for a deal before the start of Ramadan, which is on March 10th. And this deal would make sure Gazans get the aid they need right now. The UN says child malnutrition levels in Gaza are the worst in the world. And all this as Israel is doubling down on its plans to invade Rafah. NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez has more.
As the fighting rages on in Gaza and the humanitarian crisis in the Strip deepens, there is really very little evidence on the ground to support President Biden's earlier optimism that a ceasefire deal is possible by Monday. I spoke to an Israeli official earlier today. They say the talks at this point are basically stalled, that Israel and the United States are waiting for a formal response from Hamas to that framework that was hammered out in Paris with the CIA director over the weekend. We spoke earlier to a senior Hamas official, Bassem Naim. He confirms that Hamas is still studying that proposal, but he says there are very significant obstacles standing in the way of a deal at this point. He pointed to a couple of them. One, this perennial question of whether a ceasefire would be temporary, which is what Israel says needs to happen, that it will resume its military campaign on the other side of any deal, or whether the ceasefire will be permanent, which is what Hamas wants. They are saying any pause in fighting must lead to a permanent end to the war. There's also this question about whether Israeli forces will withdraw from population centers inside of Gaza during the deal, or whether they will leave the Gaza Strip altogether, which is what Hamas is demanding. Every day that goes by without a deal, fear is growing for the 134 hostages still being held by Hamas. There is a special urgency about getting those female hostages out, following testimony that some of them may be facing sexual abuse at the hands of their captors. And there is also growing urgency about the humanitarian crisis inside of Gaza. The UN today saying a quarter of all the people in Gaza are just one step away from famine at this point, and that borderline starvation, particularly concentrated in the north of Gaza, where the UN says Israeli military restrictions and a complete collapse of law and order means they can no longer deliver food to the north of the Strip. Our teams in Gaza have seen families that are trying to feed their children with flakes of barley intended for donkeys. They say they are sending their kids out dodging gun battles to try to find firewood because there is no cooking gas. And every day that the fighting continues is another day that this crisis deepens. Back to you.
Ralph Sanchez, thank you so much. And Pope Francis was hospitalized today after some complications from the flu. NBC News Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons has more on how the Pope is doing tonight. Keir?
Hey there, good day to you. This is going to worry many Catholics around the world and other folks who love Pope Francis. News that he has attended the hospital again today for a CT scan, according to reports now. A quick visit, but it has people worried because he had to have an aide read a speech for him at the general audience today after telling people there that he was suffering from a cold. The Vatican saying over the weekend that he was suffering from flu-like symptoms. And now in a statement, the Vatican saying after the general audience, Pope Francis went to the Gemelli Hospital for some diagnostic tests. At the end, he returned to the Vatican. But of course, Pope Francis has been suffering from health complaints in recent years. In 2021, he underwent abdominal surgery. And just late last year, he had to cancel a trip to the COP climate conference, something that he very much wanted to do because of, again, respiratory challenges. So he's been sicker than he appears to be now. And of course, remember, he's 87 years old. He is missing part of a lung that was removed when he was a young man. Consistent challenges with respiratory illnesses like colds, like flus. And of course, this is cold and flu season in Rome. And yet Pope Francis, being Pope Francis, has continued to meet many, many people. He does pick up these bugs. It does worry people. But so far, as I say in that statement, he's back at the Vatican, perhaps in people's prayers a little bit more today.
Keir Simmons, thank you so much. And before we go, it is time for the future of everything. We are learning more tonight about that historic moon landing that went a little sideways. Details from NASA are straight ahead, so stay tuned. And time now for the future of everything. And according to a new national survey of drivers who have switched over to electric, there is a pretty big disconnect going on when it comes to access to chargers. A lot of EV drivers are complaining that America's charging infrastructure is getting worse and not keeping up with the record number of EVs out on the road, which has a lot of people considering alternatives. National climate reporter Chase Kane has the latest.
Americans with electric vehicles love driving them.
I would never go back to gas after this.
What they don't always love is charging them. The latest J.D. Power survey of EV owners shows widespread frustration. Drivers in cities like Miami, Dallas, Denver, and San Francisco struggle to find working chargers as often as 1 in every 4 stops, fueling hesitation to hang up the pump.
We must be able to just charge and go, which right now we're not able to. We have to map that out.
Nearly 1 in 10 new cars sold last year was electric, but the Biden administration may be pumping the brakes. The New York Times reporting EV milestones for automakers may be pushed from 2026 to 2032. At the same time, trying to build a lot more charging.
Yeah, clearly we need more. We have about 170,000 charging stations across the country. Now the president's goal is to get to 500,000. We're going to get there by 2026. You know, I think the unevenness of this whole push will even out over time.
And it's an important push because in the U.S., the biggest source of planet heating emissions comes from transportation, 29%. It's also the fastest rising source. But maybe you've heard about another way to drive with no emissions, no mining for a big battery, and no time spent charging. Hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, which I first reported on in 2021 while covering the Olympic Games in Tokyo.
The really cool thing about them is that instead of producing greenhouse gas from a tailpipe, the only exhaust from these cars is just a little bit of water.
For now, in the U.S., they're only sold in California with 18,000 on the road so far.
And I've had the hydrogen car for about 8 years now, and I'm not going back.
But there's got to be a catch, right? Well, yeah, making hydrogen fuel requires a lot of energy. And that's why a champion of hydrogen at UC Irvine says personal cars should still go electric.
If you have a light-duty vehicle, you're not carrying too much stuff, you're not going too far, you should use a battery. But if you do have heavy-duty, long-range, or fast fueling that's required, hydrogen offers those features. Hydrogen also can decarbonize things that could not be decarbonized otherwise.
But expect to see hydrogen replacing more buses and trucks in the near future, and a lot more electric charging stations popping up in the next few years, thanks to a federal investment of $7.5 billion. In California, I'm National Climate Reporter Chase Kane.
Chase Kane, thanks so much. And now to an update from the moon. We got some new images beamed back today from the first American-made rover to land on the lunar surface since the Apollo missions. You're looking at the landing gear of Odysseus making contact with the surface of the moon. And here's another angle. Despite rolling over, basically sitting sideways, the company partnering with NASA on that mission is calling it a success so far, and they are still receiving data as of earlier today. So for more, let's bring in Dr. Paul Sutter. He is an astrophysicist and NASA advisor. Dr. Sutter, what do you make of the updates that we've seen so far?
This is a remarkable achievement all around. You know, landing on the moon is incredibly difficult, especially doing it autonomously. The last 15 minutes or so of the spacecraft had no human intervention whatsoever. It was only onboard systems that were in charge of guidance, propulsion, landing. And yeah, it wasn't perfect. It essentially tripped on a rock on the way down. But nothing's perfect. This is how we learn. This is how we adapt. This is how we solve challenges to make the next one even better.
And I got to ask you about this other piece of space news, this near miss today between a NASA spacecraft and a big old hunk of space junk, this dead Russian satellite coming within, I don't know, 65 feet of each other. Yeah. I feel like we were just talking about this possibility like last week. And now this, what'd you think of that?
Yeah. This is a very real problem. There are over 10,000 satellites in orbit around the Earth. About 9,000 of them are still active. Plus, there's another 25,000 just pieces of junk, little bits of metal strung around in orbit. And the problem with this is that these are traveling at tens of thousands of miles per hour. These two satellites that almost crashed were not steerable. We could not avoid the collision if they were on a collision course. And if they were to smash into each other, they would create a debris cloud that would continue to orbit the Earth for years, if not decades to come, posing a hazard to every other satellite mission in orbit around the Earth.
How far away do you think we are from having an orbiting dump truck that can clean some of that stuff up?
Unfortunately, this is a very, very difficult challenge because it's very expensive to get objects up into orbit. And so to have a dump truck essentially means you have to get the dump truck up into orbit. It needs to maneuver to attach onto the satellite, and then either needs to bring it down into the atmosphere or kick it way up into a much higher orbit. All of that takes energy. All of that takes propellant and usually involves sacrificing the dump truck in the mission itself. So there are no easy solutions. The best path forward is for governments and private companies to work together to ensure that all missions, all satellites have a lifetime, have a way of deorbiting themselves at the end of their missions.
And when you talk about deorbiting, you're talking about something like a thruster that just pushes it gently back into the atmosphere to burn it up?
Exactly. That's exactly it. Either push it into the atmosphere where it burns up or push it up into a very, very far orbit where we don't have to worry about it for a long time.
More thrusters in space. Fingers crossed. Dr. Paul Sutter, thank you so very much for joining us. And that does it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. This is Stay Tuned. We'll see you tomorrow. Stay tuned.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.